Hello, and welcome to the Creative Women Wanted podcast, the podcast for Black women in television to talk about creativity, work, community, and wellness. And I am just delighted to have you here today because today, this interview with Felicia Pride, screenwriter, producer, and director, listen, it almost had me in tears multiple times. So, Felicia Pride is a TV writer and a producer and an award winning filmmaker. She wrote on Ava DuVernay's Queen Sugar and was most recently a producer on Grey's Anatomy. She's currently developing shows with Amazon, Netflix, and FX. In film, she's the writer and executive producer of Really Love, produced by Macro, which debuted on Netflix and became a top 10 movie on the platform. She's also sold features to Universal, Sony, and AGC Studios. Felicia made her directorial debut with Tender, a short film which aired on Stars, and is currently on the festival circuit with Look Back at It, a proof of concept that she is very excited about for her directorial feature debut. She founded and runs Honey Child, a production company catering to Black women 40 plus, and is the co-host of their NAACP nominated podcast, Child Please. And when I tell you, Felicia, yo, she is wise. She is so passionate. And for all of us artists, she is us and she sees us and she continues to validate us through her own experience. And I'm just really excited for you all to hear this interview with Felicia Pride. Hello, Felicia. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to interview you. I wanted to say because you give me like multi-passionate, multi-talented energy, and I'm the same way, except for there was a time when I was like in this community that was like focus on one thing, and it's like I had to relearn this part of me that is multi-passionate, that's a manifesting generator. So I'm really excited to chat with you
I love
today.
that. Passionate. I love that.
So, how would you describe your life right now, or even in the past week? Like, what have your days or weeks been looking like?
Well, I just moved. So it's been like, and it's funny because I moved because for a few reasons. One, I just felt like sometimes I just need to shake shit up, shake stuff up. I don't know if I can.
Yes. No, you can cuss, girl. You can cuss.
Sometimes I just need to shake shit up. And I sometimes I just need new energy. I moved to where I was formerly living during the pandemic. So it was great. It treated me well during that time. And I was like, I think I need some new energy.
Mhm.
So moving has been about downsizing, cleaning out stuff, letting stuff go, but also welcoming in new energy, new possibilities. So that's kind of the wavelength I've been on. But then you got to get work done, you know. So I've also been doing a ton of writing. Like I'm in heavy writing mode right now. So yeah, just kind of balancing the two.
I love that. Would you say that the new space has created the energy or given you the energy that you have been looking for, that you think or that you needed?
I think so. I'm just embracing it. Something was like, "You should move. It's time to go," and I was like, "All right." I just listened. I
Right.
just moved it.
Yeah,
I just
I
moved
love
in it.
that.
So
So you talk about writing, and I see your poster behind you. I actually want to talk about that. So you've written and executive produced your own projects, including Really Love on Netflix, which you mentioned it took a few years to make. So why was that particular project so important to you? And I'm curious as to what that story means to you as an artist.
yeah, well, it actually took about 10 years to make. Um,
Okay. Yeah, yes.
and I say that because, you know, I think we have to remember the perseverance that creatives have. You know, often creatives are not seen as committed, but we have a wild capacity for commitment. So yeah, it meant a lot of things. One, you know, I moved to LA at 35 years old with the screenplay that became Really Love, right? So it was in an early foray for me into a new type of writing because I was previously wrote books and then was a journalist. It got me to LA. It taught me a lot about the business. The film is directed by Angel Christie Williams and produced by Macro and Melanin Productions. Um, and it just taught me a lot about um, a few things. One, the sort of business and its um, how they classify and talk about our work. There were a
Mhm.
lot of no's that came from this film, and I remember one in particular was like, "We've seen this film a million times," and I was like, "With Black people in it?" You know what I mean?
Let's
It was
be clear.
cricket. So that was one piece. But then the reception of the film, in terms of just so many Black folks
Yes.
uh, DMing us like, I see myself, I feel this film. And even though, you're so hard on yourself, you're like, oh, the process and the things and all the things that went behind the scenes. But what I learned is that Black people in particular just want to know that you care, that there
Yeah.
was care in the process, that there was care in these characters, and everyone who was part of this film cared in that way. So that was just a reminder of like what's most important when it comes to the work is that care, even when you feel like, oh, I don't know if I got it completely right. And, as creatives, sometimes we hold ourselves back because a lot of us are perfectionists and that sort of thing. But care is a huge piece of the creative process as well. So that was a great reminder for that. And then the film is about an artist, right? It's about a painter and the struggles we go through in terms of trying to be loved and trying to love and trying to, be put on, and try to remain true to ourselves and all the things. So,
No, I love that, and I think I love that you speak to creatives being committed, because I think in this world that's like so instant gratification, post, it's like we that's different for us because our work takes a lot of time, and we can't get instant gratification every day
yeah,
unless we're. And it's like I don't want to post every day. I want to go make my documentary, right? And so I really love that you mentioned that. One of the things that you've also talked about is that you took a 7-year hiatus from writing. So how did that affect and influence your present?
ooh, yeah. That was a dark time. I mean, that was sort of, I was writing books at the time, and I wasn't able to sell another book. And I didn't realize it then that books weren't my form. But they just became really difficult. The business became really difficult for me. I started to blame writing for not financially supporting me when that's not writing's job. So coming out of that 7 years, I had to reaffirm my relationship with the work, in a way that was healthy, and that there were not expectations around financial stability. That's my job. That's not writing's job. And to really get back to a place where the work is pure, the work is the thing, the work is the most important. But it was hard to come back to my writer self. It was hard to come back to my artist self. It was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. So in this present,
Yeah.
I'm very clear that I'm never going back. Like, I am never going back to that time. I should have just, I needed to get a job at the time. I should have just got a job and kept writing, but I stopped completely. So I know now that that's not something I ever want to do again. I also have been in a place where I am, helping others who are in that space.
Yeah.
I run the Create Daily, and we do workshops and creative challenges and that sort of thing because I know how hard it is to get out of a creative rut. So that's also important. And then also, I'm very clear that I don't get writer's block. I may be procrastinating, but I'm not blocked.
That's an affirmation, right? It's like I love the way you're using your words,
Oh,
right?
it's all very important to be very clear on what's happening and what's going on. So yeah.
So is after your hiatus, right? How soon after did you start Honey Child? And can we talk a little bit about that and your mission there? Because it
Yeah.
was through my research about your work and your desire to tell stories about Black women over 40. Like I love how specific you were. That really, really inspired me.
Yeah. I started what has become Honey Child like in 2018, but I want to say we got really serious around 2020. in terms of crystallizing the vision, um, crystallizing the mission, our approach, and all of that. And also that coming up with exactly what you're saying, which is to center Black women 40 and over in front of and behind the scenes. So that means, of course, stories that center honeys is what we call our audience. But it also can be stories by honeys or stories honeys might be interested in. And our interests are very varied and very wide. And the stories we want to tell are very varied and very wide. And we want to do that in audio, TV, digital, film, events, across the board. We want to be there. So it's been an amazing experience, being so specific, and also leaving space to grow, right? But being very specific, very focused, very targeted, and being of service to this audience. Since we started Honey Child, we released our produced our first podcast called Child Please, which was nominated for NAACP award.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We shot a proof of concept for our first feature film. Our first feature film is called Look Back at It.
Yes,
It
yes.
just recently won a production grant from Plan A, which is a festival co-founded and organized by Miss Tina Lawson. And so that was a fantastic. And we've just been doing some really, really great things that just make me happy and light me up. And get the chance to work with wonderful Black women, where our company is run and operated by Black women, as is most of our, like, Child Please and Look Back at It, all Black women creative teams.
I feel like, I mean, that's certainly where we have things in common, because that's what we do too. At Third and Wonder, we focus on telling Black women stories with Black women behind the camera, and I love that you're so vocal about it. I feel like early on, when I would tell people what we were doing, I remember a Black woman telling me, "This is a small niche. Like, why would you focus on this small niche?" But I'm really proud to have continued the work, because like I built a business off of it 7 years, and it's like I love telling our stories and I love doing it with us.
Yeah. And
Love
there's
that.
nothing small about Black women. So
Come on, I was like, you a Black woman telling me the small niche, like
mm-mm.
I feel like when she told me, I was pretty young, and I could have easily been like, you know what, oh my God. But I just was so convicted in my desire to tell our
We're
story.
grateful for that, for sure.
Thank
And yeah,
you.
and then we can get into the business case, right, which has already been made about the cultural, financial, and social influence and impact of Black women.
Right.
We can get into all that.
Right. And I feel like, so I'm just, at the end of the day, I'm just wanted to say I'm thankful to you too for being committed to it. And it's encouraging, right? It's like you in your artist bag, right? Like you're getting
Yeah.
funding, you do your feature, you doing what you want to do to create the life that you want to create.
Thank
And I
you.
actually jump down to, since you mentioned Look Back at It, I want to jump down to it on my list of questions. I'm excited to see you direct it. Like, how was that, and what made you decide to do a proof of concept for it? For
Yeah.
your
Yeah. So Look Back at It, the feature film, is something that I've been writing for like the last 5 years in different iterations. And it just came a time where I was like, you know what, we kind of got to get this moving for me. Sometimes, again, the shaking shit up. So the proof of concept was one, to be directing again, because I directed Tender, which was my first short film, and it was such a fantastic experience. I wanted to be directing narrative again, something that I wrote. And we also wanted to have something that Honey Child produced, and that we had some skin in the game for this project in particular. So Honey Child produced and financed the proof of concept,
Yeah.
and also wanted to show the tone. And Tender was a very different short. It's tender. Look Back at It is, has a lot more comedy, and just a different type of energy. So we wanted those things, particularly because as we're going to go out for financing and partners and producers on the feature film, we wanted to have that as a tool to raise money. And so the proof of concept stars Angel Akita Moore, who's a fantastic in it, and I'm just really proud of it. We're on the festival circuit right now, and I'm really proud of what we did.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see, and I love the path that you're taking with
Thank you.
it. So what felt different about turning 40, and like how did your thinking and perspectives shift in this decade of your life? And how did it impact your storytelling?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I didn't really get my shit together until like 38 and a half. And I also felt like I didn't really start loving myself until like 40 in 2 days. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like it took me a long time. So I think the biggest piece for me was the self-worth piece and really getting into the self-worth, which is connected to the self-love, which just helps me show up differently, move through the world differently, and go after what, like exactly what you're saying, going after what I want, no matter what, despite what people say and their fear and their judgments and their racism, their sexism, and their ageism and all the shit, like still going after the things, and being very, finding peace in knowing that I'm on the right path. Like I don't feel the anxiety, a lot of the anxiety that I felt in my 30s. My 30s were a mess. I felt all the things, and I just have a new type of peace and a deeper joy than I've ever had in my life. And yeah, it was definitely a turning point for me, for sure.
I appreciate that because I feel like where I'm at is like I've heard the term and I've tried. I think I've used the term radical acceptance, but I'm really in a season of my life where it's like, oh no, you got to really take radical acceptance
Yeah.
seriously. I'm curious. Would you tell your 20-year-old self something different than you would tell your 30-year-old self? And if so, like, what would you tell those versions of you?
I think 20 year old, my 20s were, what they should have been, having fun, making mistakes,
Mhm.
living life. I think a lot of 20-year olds these days are so serious. I'm like, go have fun. Go fuck up. Like, it's just like, I gotta have everything figured out. I think social media has a lot to do with it. But I'm like, go. So I feel like my 20s was that, a lot of fucking up. My 30s, I think there was just so much angst and, I was bumping up against the world's expectations of me. And I remember my father telling me one time that he was like, "You frustrate yourself when you try to normalize yourself." And I think I came to a point where I was like, "I'm gonna stop trying to normalize myself. I'm gonna stop trying to be what the world thinks and says I should be, and I'm just gonna be who I am." And that really
Mhm.
opened up a lot of things. But I kind of feel like I don't know what I would tell my 30-year-old self, because I think I needed that. I needed to go through that to get here.
Right.
So
You
yeah.
look that I
I
mean
would
that
say it's better maybe on the other side. Like, this is not in vain, maybe is what I would tell a
no, but I
30-year-old.
mean I love that. Like it's like we do go through what we're meant to go through, right? That's what I mean by I know that this season for me is a season of radical acceptance. So I've heard you say that one of your biggest differences, or one of the biggest differences of this chapter of your life, is that it's driven by purpose and not ego. So, what does that mean to you? Can you break that down for our listeners, and tell us what played a part in you discovering that?
Yeah, and I would say inflated ego. Everyone has ego, and I think a little
Right.
ego
Normal.
is helpful, um, as is a little petty. But I think that, you know, our purpose at Honey Child is our North Star, right? So when we say that we want to service Black women, we are very serious about that. And I want to be wherever Black women are. If Black women watch Lifetime, I want to be working with Lifetime. If Black women are watching, HBO, I want to be like, I want to be wherever we are.
I love it. I need to
That
write that down. I'm writing that down, by the
that
way.
provides the North Star. And so I don't really, when we make decisions, we use that as the barometer. It's not about all the other things. It's really like, okay, is this going to help us serve our purpose? And then
That's
for me, it just helps me to know, number one, that I walk in my purpose every day, right? Like, and also that the purpose doesn't have to, especially when you work in Hollywood, the business makes you feel like they're the only way to walk in your purpose, and that's absurd and
right.
also very short-sighted, right? So for me, I'm like, oh, there's so many. If the purpose is to service Black women, there's so many ways to do that. Hollywood is just one vehicle to do that. And also, like, the purpose for me also gives me, I said, that peace. Like, I'm very at peace with what I have sort of the work that I've already given to the world. Like, I'm not one of those trying to chase. I'm not chasing nothing except maybe my feature film for Look Back at It. That's probably the only thing that I'm like, I gotta do it. Everything else, I'm like, we on this journey. Like, it's kind of like gravy at this point, right? Like, I feel like the work that we've done, the work that I've done over my 20-year career, I'm good. I am
Mm.
good. So I'm not. So that gives me a lot of peace, and that gives me a lot of space to then continue to create, because I'm not chasing stuff and the things they tell you you're supposed to have in order to feel successful, in order to feel like, quote unquote, your legacy is set and all these things. Like, I'm good. My mama was behind me watching me direct while we shot in my aunt's house for Look Back at It. I'm good. You know what I mean? Like, the things that matter, the things that are really important to me, I've achieved.
I feel like I'm gonna cry. I mean, it's just like, it just makes me think about just how hard I am on myself sometimes with trying to get to a certain place, right? And so I think that, I mean, you sound peaceful. You have a very peaceful tone about you and a peaceful energy about you. So, I love that. There was a question I wanted to ask you based on something you said, and
It'll
it
come back.
definitely yeah, it slipped my mind. But recently you hosted the Creative Comeback Challenge, and it came for me at such a perfect time, because last year I was like, oh, you need creative confidence. Like, I
Hmm.
realized that I need more creative confidence. So your challenge came at the perfect time. It
What does
really
that
helped me.
mean to you? What is that? How are you defining that?
So in my mid 20s or even my early 20s, I would say I would have an idea and I would have no problem executing it. I'm like, yes, let's go do it. Let's go create it. And I think now being in my 30s, I was like, I'm like, oh no, but like, is
Yeah.
somebody going to be interested in it? Is somebody going to buy it? Like, all of this stuff. And it's like, not understanding that what God has given me is enough.
Hmm.
And if he's called me to it, he's calling me to put it out. And so I've had to like become more confident in that, and more
Yes.
confident in, I know how to direct. I know, like, and more confident in what I'm doing. So
Yes.
this what I've also discovered is like creativity has to be as important to me as drinking water. Like, sometimes I'll like stop myself from creating because I'm like, oh, it doesn't fit into my strategic plan. Girl, what? You know? And
I
so
feel that. That's the world, right? Like, that's the world we live in, which is not necessarily conducive to creativity.
right. They don't go together, but I do feel like the world has made creativity something that we have to do in order to get to where we're trying to go. When, as an artist, it is just who I am. And so I'm
Hmm.
curious, like, what role does creativity and creating play in your life, or and what role does creativity play for you in your spiritual journey? Like, how does creativity in your life kind of go hand in hand?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when you talk about being in your artist bag, I feel like I wasn't able to really, really get in that bag until I did the self work, until I really started to interrogate all the things that were holding me back. The shadow work, the going back to childhood, the toxic relationships that I had been in, the self-doubt, the friendships that weren't really serving me. Like, once I started to like excavate all of that and interrogate all that, things really started to open up for me creatively. And also, once I started to be very clear on what success looks like to me, um, things also get started to open up for me creatively. And when I started to let go of expectations, particularly around the business and things that are out of my control, I only focus on what I can control, and again, like, the purpose. And that has helped me to make stuff because I'm not waiting on folks. Of course, money and resources is always um uh I wouldn't say it's always a challenge, but it is always a challenge. You know what I mean? um But like, I'm not interested in just waiting around for people, motherfuckers, to get it. You know what I mean? And to like, I'm like, let's make. We have stories to tell. What are the ways that we can do it? What do we have in our hand that we can use now to make and create? Because for me, that's the happy place. Creating with amazing collaborators is a happy place. Not all the red tape and the
The
politics,
politics. Yeah.
the you know, ass kissing and the like, how can we continue to make? How can we again be in service of the purpose?
Ooh, that is so good. I'm curious in letting go of expectations, right? Like, was that a gradual process, or were you like, oh, done, I'm done, like I'm done with the expectations, or did you find yourself having to be like, oh, but no, remember, we're letting go?
Yeah, it was definitely a gradual process, and I was like, you know, acing it. And I want to say maybe recently there were two experiences where I was holding on a little bit, and I don't like that disappointment. So I was like, you know what, this is why I don't do this. That feeling of disappointment. So let me go back to what I was doing, which is trusting. Essentially, that's kind of also the way to look at it from a perspective shift. Is like, okay, if letting go of expectations too hard, then maybe trusting is easier. They both hard,
Right.
but
But that's more in our control, right? If I
I
can
was like, let
trust.
me just go back to
Yeah.
trusting that everything, because everything does work out the way that it should. Like, that's the other thing I think we have to just pull evidence from my life to remind us, like, but it always does work out the way that it should. At least it has in my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was like, let me go back to letting go because I don't like how this disappointment feels. It's not serving me. So yeah.
Mm. Are there any books? I love talking about books. I'm a book girl. Are there any books that have been really helpful to your spiritual journey or to your self work?
I do listen to a lot of podcasts, just all over the place with podcasts that help with the spiritual work. But I would probably say, I don't know if it was a book, but really just my therapist and maybe journaling, like my own book of thoughts. Journaling has been really, really key in helping me understand and see patterns, and also so you can look back at old journals, which is always really helpful to see the growth as well. And then working with my therapist has been tremendous. We've been working together since 2017, and life changing.
Yeah. Look, I agree. I'm a queer Black woman, and my therapist is a queer Black woman, and we're
Mhm.
also like within the, like, a year of each other, and so it's like I feel so seen.
Yes.
So
Yes, like you can cut through all of the explaining and judgment. I
right.
just feel like I've had some therapists where I was like, what is this that I'm
What are you talking about? Right.
like, are you serious right now? So yeah, that's definitely been life changing.
So you mentioned in other interviews that sexuality and sisterhood and Black joy and trauma are themes you like to explore in your work. Why those?
Because I just feel like it's life stuff. I realize that I write about three things for the most part. One is Black love, which is very expansive. So self love, love of community, love of family, romantic love, erotic love, spiritual love, love of self. And then I write about people coming back to themselves, particularly women coming back to
Yes.
themselves, right? So that's part of the love piece. And then I write about class and like again which is also associated with the expectations of the world and then our expectations of each other. And so those themes of like sexuality, sisterhood, joy, all of those kind of fit into particularly like the main theme that I read about, which is people coming back to themselves. Sexuality is one way that I like to explore how people are able to come back to themselves. Sisterhood is like the support system I think we need to come back to ourselves.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Joy is what you feel when you come back to your like, so it's all kind of connected.
That's really beautiful. I feel like many of the books that I've been reading are about coming home to yourself. Like I'm
Yeah.
reading this book called The Unfolding by a Black woman. I have Homecoming here
Oh,
by Dr. Tanner
yes,
Bryan. Yes.
Dr.
Um,
right?
What'd you say?
Dr.
What'd you say?
Dr. Tima.
Yep, Dr. Tima, sorry. And then Lavon Briggs, she wrote Sensual
Oh,
Sex.
yes. LaVon Briggs was just on our podcast.
Yes, I gotta listen. I have to listen to that because I listened to her today on Balanced Black Girl, and I just saved her on your episode. And
Yeah,
she's a Leo sun. Oh my God. She's
fantastic.
and I saw hers is about the art of coming home back to your body. And I'm like, yes,
Yes.
I
Yes.
love that I love that you are putting visuals to that experience, words and visuals to that experience of
Thank
ours.
you. Thank you.
So what is exciting you right now in the world? What television shows, what podcasts, what are you listening to that's bringing you joy? Or what are you
Um,
doing that's bringing you joy?
well, I love Southside.
Yeah, so funny.
Um, that's a show that I love that just makes me laugh, and I would love to do a version of that for Baltimore. Like I just love how specific it is. I love how black it is. I love how funny it is. I love how smart it is. So that's something that brings me joy. I've been listening to the new Music Soul Child album that just came out, and
Okay.
I it just something about that album is clicking for me. I don't know what it is because it's like, I like that he's not trying to like be someone else. He's like doing his thing, but it sounds like music, but it sounds fresh, but it doesn't sound like he's trying to be 19. You know what I mean? Like I just really appreciate I really appreciate that a lot. And what else have I been? Every time people ask me this question, I'm kind of like, I don't know. But I definitely have been, I guess, also just enjoying this journey of look back at it and the reception to it. Seeing the reception to our Black women stars in the film and seeing audiences really kind of connect to it has been fantastic as well. So yeah.
I love that. I'm excited. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited for you.
Thank
Um,
you.
I just want to wrap with like, is there anything that you want to share with our audience? These are Black women who are in television, who create television, who want to be in television. Is there anything that we may not have covered that you'd want to share with them?
Um, well, I'm just excited. Honey Child is actually coming out. We're doing our slate of projects now that we're taking to the marketplace. So I'm really excited about those. We do a lot of projects based on IP.
Okay.
So that's really exciting. So there's a number of projects that I'm writing, or I'm also starting to supervise writers. And then Honey Child's also looking for ways to connect more directly with our audience of honeys, including honeys who are writers and in the business or want to get into the business. And just in terms of like being Black women in this business, I would just say like the business is not the end all be all. You know what I mean? Like it,
Yes.
it's just a piece. It's just a piece. Like we cannot put our value in institutions that were built that didn't have us in mind in the first place. So I just want us to be pouring our value into ourselves and each other, supporting each other's work, making our work when possible. Those sorts of things are what I want for us.
Well, thank you so much. It really reminds me of my mom always reminds me that like when things are hard, she always tells me, you've always wanted to be an artist. So it's
Mm.
like if you weren't in this system, right? The Hollywood system, you would want to be an artist. So
Yeah, you're still an artist without this.
exactly. It's a reminder of that.
Exist, yeah, you'd still be an artist.
Right, like there's no validation that this system or this organization can do for me because this is what I was meant to do regardless. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience. Like I almost teared up.
And for this platform, this is awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wasn't that good? I was like, yep, I feel seen. I feel so seen when we got off. I was just like, thank you so much. You are so encouraging. She is really encouraging. Like, this journey is difficult. And it's like, how can I make it easy for myself? I can remove the expectations that I have on my journey. I can give myself more grace. I can live what I long for. Like, Man, it was good. I hope you all enjoyed it. And if you did, please pass this along. Share the wealth that Felicia Pride gave us. And if you like this podcast, outside of sharing it, make sure you like and subscribe and you rate and you review. Because remember, ratings are wealth, honey. All right. Well, you all enjoy your day. Thank you again, and I will talk to you soon.